Hi everybody. Um, so Stolen, it. I mean, it's my first film, but I've been trying to make films for a long time before this, spending a lot of time trying to develop material. Um, Very easily, another film could have been my first feature. It didn't, for whatever reasons, it didn't happen very close to getting there. So I wouldn't say that I've been it was intended with the idea that this is going to be my first feature. That definitely wasn't. It so happened that it's my first feature. I've spent better part of 5 6 years thinking about it and sort of living with this idea, which came to me watching one video clip on TV about the Karbi Anglong lynching of two men. These were two young men, very much like myself. They were my age. I found it very personal. I found it very connected to them. They had gone home to their hometown from Bombay for Diwali, decided to go for a fishing trip, and were wrongfully accused of being child kidnappers and brutalized and murdered. And the videos that were like doing the rounds, and they were horrific. I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about them. You know, pleading to this massive crowd that's making videos, laughing at them, and in this sort of rageful but light, I mean, not very serious manner, they kill these two young men. And similar to what Chhatrapal was saying, I personally love the outdoors. I go to remote places with my friends, and this really put some fear in me that this sort of injustice can happen in the country, and that I'm not safe. I'm in a sense of fear, which then at that point it sticks there in your belly. And I started to read about it, learn about it, and I found out there was a whole phenomenon going on called WhatsApp lynchings, which were, again, have become quite commonplace in India. But there are a few very usual lynchings that we associate with based on religion, caste, cows. I mean, some of them are more specific. This was all about, these WhatsApp lynchings were all about child kidnappers. I mean, and there was not one but hundreds of them between 2015 and 2020, before COVID, which then slowed it down a little bit. There were hundreds of these lynchings where people were wrongfully accused of being child kidnappers and brutalized and killed by mobs. And they were happening in every state. Stolen is actually a story about anywhere in India because of this kind of research. And that research then led me down the path of understanding child crime and how child crime is on an incredible rise in our country. 50 to 60,000 kids go missing a year. That's apparently 10 minutes a kid going missing in a day. I mean, it's boggling to think about these numbers. 200, 150, 200 kids going missing in a day. So this whole process of, it started with that one incident. And as I got into it deeper and deeper, I learned about this really vicious cycle that, we're living in, where people are being wrongfully accused, but powerless people are trying to find justice in vigilantism. And we've created this cesspool of, mistrust, like Chhatrapal said, massive mistrust in our society, complete fracturing of our social bonds. And that's really how, I mean, then the development went on to become Stolen, which is, I mean, now is a narrative fiction. It's got other elements of filmmaking in it, but really that was the start of the journey.
Thank you. And before I pose my next question, I mean, I just would briefly say what the films are. And Toward Happy Alleys is like a personal, intimate documentary made by Sreemoyee on her journey in Iran, where she meets filmmakers and common people. Yeah, and then like the interaction forms the crux of the film, where it's like there is Sreemoyee's person being in different spaces kind of becomes the guiding thread. And Chhatrapal's film Ghaath is a three-part film. It consists of three parts, and and we'll come to that. And it's set in the jungles and of central India, where the Maoists are in conflict with the Indian state. And the story revolves around one cop who's kind of he's like a super cop, and then people from the other side, the Maoist fighters and common people who are trying to kind of settle scores. And Stolen is about a missing baby which is presumed to be kidnapped by the protagonist, and then they are kind of sucked into a very dark and unending voyage through the hinterlands of India and trying to save their lives. So my next question would be that in some senses, Chhatrapal, you also mentioned that you grew up in cities, but it's in some ways it's your hometown. So my question would be, your position as outsiders of some kind, even in your film, I am presuming that your point of identification in Stolen is the other brothers rather than the villagers. So does your position as outsiders, either as scriptwriters or filmmakers, does it kind of give you certain advantages, or does it disadvantage you in some ways? Does it kind of like limit access in some ways when you're kind of writing a material, or do you draw a line saying that, okay, I belong to this social position, so I cannot take a call there, and so on?
So I will start this. So what Meenakshi shared is Berlin. So she thinks my film has an internal gaze. Very, very interesting, because I belong to a tribal subgroup, even though I raised in the city. And I was in frequent contact. Whenever I used to go in jungles, we used to meet tribals. But of course, I told him they're not exotic people. They're like normal people, village people. So I have strong tribal roots. So Meenakshi and many of the Berlin people think I have an internal gaze. So the question there was different, but I don't know what is my gaze is. But then who will? If you have seen my film, so probably मेरे से ज़्यादा अगर more internal gaze probably would have been Perkuz. But can he make a film? Or Raghunath, can he make a film? The question is. So, I mean, I'm really, so external gaze, I don't believe in this internal external gaze. What I think is, if we can empathize with the characters, so it doesn't matter. Of course, if we are judging the person, like, a Savarna person making a film on a Dalit character, where a Savarna character is trying to become his Masiha, then there is a problem. But I don't think, I don't know, I haven't seen their films, but I'm very sure the way they talked, it's more of an empathy, trying to their shoes. That's what I think. Yeah.
Very, very, I agree with you very much on this. My film is a bit different, but again, the question and the coming back to empathy is very important, because my film is about an Indian going to Iran and making a film about how art thrives in Iran through cinema, music, and poetry. And of course, strictly speaking, I'm an outsider because I'm an Indian. But and everyone's also said this, that it's a position not of just an outsider, but an informed outsider, because I learned Farsi to go and film in Iran. So, I mean, my entry point was, I knew that if I don't speak their language, then I will not be able to gain the trust. And, we've grown up, we've spent a lot of time, I guess you will agree, watching a lot of films that people outside, or especially the West, makes on countries like India or places like Iran, Afghanistan, and people don't bother speaking our language. We've watched so many films like this. So at Berlinale, someone actually in my Q&A said that, Sreemoyee, your film, it didn't, an Iranian said that, it didn't feel like a UFO landed in Iran. It just totally felt like someone had made the effort to talk to us in our language, and that's so rare, like, which film do you remember that has been made from an outsider on India, where they have made the effort to talk to us, maybe if it's a film on in Bengali, or in Hindi or Marathi, it's maybe, there could be a few, but not something that I can remember on the top of my head. And very few in Iran. So when you do that, I think language is a key point, when you make films, when you do research, when you do PhDs. Basically, that creates the empathy. As a filmmaker, mine is a doc, I knew that I cannot just land up in a country and ask people to talk about their stories if I haven't made the effort to do my bit. I cannot just start speaking in English and say, hey, how is it living in Iran? How is it, feeling? How much do you suffer? In fact, my film, I haven't really tried to show how much people suffer because that's the news that we get every day. The film is about how art thrives, how life thrives, how life goes on despite the daily suffering. And in doing so, somewhere there is this journey from an outsider towards an insider. And like Chhatrapal said, even when I was filming Panahi and the other filmmakers, and women, a lot of women, because being a woman, I got a lot of access to women's spaces. They began trusting me, and they with their stories. And they, in the end, when the revolution this began last year, this Jinjian Azadi movement began last year. The characters in my film came and said, Srimo, this is the time that you have to get your film out because we cannot tell our stories. Because in a place like Iran, an Iranian could never have made this film because everyone kind of is suspicious of the other. There could be spies within themselves. So when an outsider like me came to Iran, learned Farsi, was doing a PhD on cinema, how could someone not trust me? So a person like Jafar Panahi, who is banned from making filmmaking for 21 years officially, has a house arrest situation. He, for the first time, he admits on my film that in 3 years, for the first time, I'm giving an interview when I'm not allowed to. So this is what an outsider position actually can bring. And sometimes we need people from the outsider coming to us with empathy and telling our stories when we cannot tell our stories anymore, So this position is very important.
I, I mean, I personally do feel like an outsider in this situation to some extent, and I try my levelist best to find out about my subjects. It's part of what makes so exciting filmmaking for me because I get to learn about new people, new subjects, and really immerse myself in that culture, that community, those problems, etc. So it's definitely one of the parts of filmmaking that's very exciting for me, and I try my levelist best to get into it. But I mean, you got to spend like all your life to know somebody. I think, I mean, you can only know so much with study, and hence my into my film is via people like me, sort of more closer to my background, etc. But I think that for me, I think I also want to put across my films more neutrally, where I mean, I don't want to show, I try not to show them as good, bad. That's not the way that I see the world. And I think most of us would agree that there is no good and bad. I mean, there's so many situations that make people react in a certain way or a different way. So I personally try to put my characters, my film, my stories in a place where the audience can, decide. I'm not deciding for them good, bad, I don't know, actually. I actually don't know. I think it's more interesting when they can either decide or realize the challenge, the challenge in being, I mean, or just processing the world or being and trying to, get on with life. I mean, there's those challenges we all face. I face it, and somebody on the other side also faces it. So I personally try to do that. So then maybe the idea of outsider insider is a little less. If you can understand your subject matter, you can understand the characters, and maybe just try to put it out there for people to feel and empathize with the process, not with the result, because I think the result can vary, but with the process, that is how I sort of kind of look at the work.
Tribal, speaking about space, tribal rights. Joram and Ghaath, I think, this year, probably. But not every year, like so many years, there is no such films. Yeah. So it doesn't matter, actually. I mean, it's better to have all kind of, internal, external, all kind of gaze. In Dalit space, I mean, maybe the tribal rights or tribal stories will grow to that space, and then that this point of outsider will be. Maybe it will happen with Buster Files.
I have specific questions about the film, but before that, if we have some questions from the press, yeah, back there.
Just a second. I'm actually curious to know the journey you went on to learn Farsi for this film, to be able to have access to these filmmakers. What was that journey like learning Farsi? And do you think you're able to understand the cultural intimacies of that language now?
Yeah. Um, so the journey began with me falling in love with cinema and poetry, and then I started finding ways to, dive into that culture. So number one was to learn the language because I was watching these films and reading this poetry of Furugh and other poets, and of course there was so much lost in translation, right? And I really felt the desire to read it in original because there was so much lost every time, and also because I was really inspired by the poetry of this feminist poet Furugh. And being 21 at that point of time, I didn't realize that I could speak as a woman about desire in the way that she did in Iran, and comparatively we are supposed to be in quotes freer, you know uh, but even then we have a history of being in a society which doesn't allow us women, men, to express the way we want to, right? None of us can really do that. So at that point of time, I was inspired. And I realized that number one, I want to learn the language, and that would be my my initial point to enter the country. And I wanted to, in the end, go to the country and see and meet the filmmakers. The only way I could do it, and the only way people like Panahi, Kiarostami, these people who we know globally successful filmmakers would take me seriously is only because I would have made that effort. I'm very sure if I would have spoken in English or just any other way, it wouldn't have worked out. But because I made the effort of learning the language, they took me seriously. So the first thing I did was I enrolled myself in a Farsi language course, intensive, in Tehran University. And I went to Iran and I started speaking, I started studying Farsi. I did an intermediate course, I did it up till then. And also doing a PhD made people really take me seriously. My PhD is also on contemporary Iranian cinema in exile, and I got my degree last year. The film finished also last year. So everything happened together. But I don't know which came first, because it was all, these were means for me to get to know the people, get to know the country from where these films came out, because I was so inspired. I honestly wish that I can be able to make films honestly, in a very honest way, in the years to come. And I want all of us as artists to have this safe space, preserved safe spaces of expression. And for me, Iran has taught me or given me a glimpse of how people are doing it there. And it's getting worse, but people are still fighting, and they're still fighting to preserve and safeguard this space of expression. So that is something that I tried to document in my film, how we can. And that's what the film is about. And without Persian, I don't think I would have been able to make the film as intimately as I did.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is a question again for Sreemoyee. Did you study Farsi because you wanted to make the film, or you studied Farsi and then made the film?
I studied Farsi because I fell in love with the cinema and the poetry. And I did the PhD because I fell in love again. And the film happened again because of that.
Yes.
When you fall in love, you don't have language to express why you do. You just fall in love. And then you want to run towards it. You want to be enlightened by this object or this person or, this love. And for me, this was the attraction, the curiosity, the passion. It took me 7 years to make the film. And it's because I was learning the language, I was doing my PhD, I traveled in and out of Iran from 2015 to 2018 end. And then the process of editing began. It's my first film. It was mostly me producing it, directing it, speaking in Farsi, doing the camera, doing the sound. And thankfully, I had a group of good editors with whom I could finish the film. But everything happened together. I knew that the only way I could get into the country was if I did these things. Academically, I needed to be in a position where people could trust me. It's not like I was just a fan who wanted to go and meet Panahi, I didn't want it to be like that. So everything happened together.
So was it
and
easy?
finished everything
Yeah.
finished together as well.
So was it easy to make a film because you were there? I mean, taking permission and stuff.
I didn't take any
you didn't take
permissions.
permission.
No. Who would I take permissions from? The
From
regime?
the government, yeah.
No, of course.
You don't have to. You did
I mean,
guerrilla filmmaking or whatever you call it.
I mean,
yeah.
we are talking about the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to know because
Yeah, there
it's
were
not-
no permissions taken, but of course there was consent from every individual I filmed. Jafar Panahi is one of the main protagonists of the film. There's another filmmaker called Mohammad Shirwani, and there's a human rights activist. So these are some known figures, and I had all their consent, and I had a group of friends. Fortunately, most of them have left Iran right now. So this is not a big problem for me. They've all moved out of Iran because there's nothing much in Iran. So the risk element is less. And this is the way I chose my characters also. Most of the women have left.
But isn't it a risk for Panahi himself? I mean,
Panahi?
Yeah.
Well, Panahi has chosen risks for himself he's a spokesperson against the regime. He's a dissident. So with or without my film, he's in and out of prison all the time. He actually, it's not just about Panahi, Mohammad Rasulov, Nasreen Sotoudeh, who's in my film. Mostly about 200 artists, even more, poets, writers, filmmakers, anybody who's a critic, journalists, everyone is in heaven right now. All the people who can make a difference are in prison. And there's a huge fear mechanism on the people right now. And and it just is getting worse. Dariush Meherji, who was the main father figure of the Iranian New Wave, was stabbed to death 2-3 weeks ago. So it just gets worse. But women in Iran have found so much guts to keep up this resistance. They are moving in the streets without the hijab now. If you go to Iran now, you will see women have discarded the headscarf. It's not that the restrictions have been relaxed, but they are protesting every day. That's how it is.
Thank you.
I had specific questions about the structure of your films. I'll begin with Chhatrapal. So your film has like 3 clear structures: Jal, Jungle, Zameen. It's divided that way, and it's almost like equal like durations. But at the same time, for example, the segment with Perku, which is like in some sense, it's a big digression because you're like following a particular character who's like in the first part, and the Perku character takes us to a whole new world and time. So I wanted to kind of like ask you about your thought process about structuring your film, and then like having the confidence that okay, during the middle section, which takes you to a different zone, we are not like clear yet of the connections between Perku and the cop and so on, to kind of have that section in the middle and then come back to the more a plot driven section at the end. So I just wanted your thoughts on how you went about structuring the film.
So initially, when I started with Ghaath, it was a short film. The first chapter, Zameen, and my is Zameen Jal Jungle, which I think is my take. And this is an anti-ideology film. And Jal Jungle Zameen, the slogan which has been used, has been politicized for a long time. So I wanted to change it a little bit. And also these are elements, natural elements first, and political slogan later. So that we forget. So, and these elements are very important for tribal people, because if you see the history, even during the British time or even before that, tribals do not want to pay tax on land because they think it's their mother, or even water. So they think the element they possess or they have should not be taxed. So the idea of resistance goes back that point of time, and we should understand that. So when I started with the short film, I realized I need 2 more stories. At that point of time, this Jameen Jal Jungle idea was not very clear. So when I came on ACP's character, I felt, since I was exploring the lens of trust, I felt I need to speak about tribal and police relationship, tribal and Nakshal relationship, which happens in jungle. Because there is a moment of that trust which happens. Like if you read any guerrilla war book, like Che Guevara's book, so he will specifically mention that public trust is key to any guerrilla warfare success. So public trust, again, while I was studying the trust, I got that point, and let me see how these 2 characters, one who is very ancient, as I told earlier, is like all we have a common roots to Perku. All our ancestors might be looking like Perku or living in jungle like Perku, doing hunting and gathering. That character, which is probably the most modern character, a cop, corrupt cop, drunkard, lonely, okay? So it's a interaction of ages. So this happened very organically to start with. And then I found about a man, Adivasi, tribal from Amazon, called Man with a Hole. He was last of his tribe. His tribe was killed by the farmers in Brazil. So I got a reference point to develop Perku one more time. And then there was a Japanese man who left civilization to stay alone like Perku. So I had 2 reference points from 2 different. So it happened. I'm telling as if I have internalized at the same point. It's not. It happened over a period of 1 year, and then I found Perku. And regarding the courage, so being a first film, that is, you have that courage. You don't know. You are not thinking about you have to conform to certain things, conform to festivals or conform to. So I thought, let me go wild with the Perku. And I think people, because he's the character which makes you feel free. That's a comment I got. Perku makes us feel free. So I think most people, and he is probably the sanest person in the film, and the most open-hearted and kindest person also. So we feel strongly about him. Yeah.
Karan, in some senses, your film is one big scene from end to end. It's like once the viewer is caught in the first premise, that's like the first shot exactly, and then it just sucks you in, and it's like endless road trip or like a road trip nightmare. So it does have its moments and passages, but it doesn't. It's not written like scene after scene. So it's just it flows so like in a very streamlined fashion. So yeah, your thoughts on like structuring the screenplay and then to find a pace for the film which is like relentless.
As Chhatrapal mentioned, first film, don't give a rat's ass where it goes. I've been trying to do this for a very long time, unsuccessfully, I must say. So I wanted to make like something that people cannot, they don't get a chance to say, nahi yaar, maza nahi aaya. Like, I wanted to do something that koi bhi dekhega to bolega, yaar, ye mere ko karna hai. That was the idea. And so I sort of decided when I was developing the idea by myself initially, I wanted to do a one-take film. The whole thing, real time. Shoot it like 2 hours real time. So that's where it started. And eventually as I developed it, I wanted to tell 2 sets of stories. The stories of the brothers who get involved in this. And then I wanted to tell the story of the mob, but I couldn't tell a story of a mob. So I picked one character to represent the mob, the mother who loses her child. So she's sort of a representation of the other side. So I want to tell these 2 stories, and I wanted to tell it all real time. I thought that maybe I could do like a one take from a singular perspective. Obviously, you can't really like take too many perspectives if you do a one take. But as I developed the story, the narrative and the characters and everything grew much larger than the treatment style that I had imagined. But but it stuck close enough to that core idea of a very almost real-time story, and hence it feels and gives that impression. We shot it also. I mean, we've edited it, but because we were so deep into that idea was so deeply set in me. I mean, most of the film has been shot single perspective, one or the other character. I put the audience in somebody's space, and then or the other person's space, but don't deviate much from that once we are there. And hence that's how it got structured. It was from that idea that I wanted to tell a real-time, non-stop story. And for me, I wanted it because I wanted the audience to be there with the characters. I wanted them to go on the journey with them. I wanted them to feel like they are part of this whole journey, this whole process of trying to find that child and what could go wrong, etc. So it was all sort of born of that very few principles, one or two principles that I kind of started off with, and then just sort of created. And it took time, and it was slow and organic, and we got to it. But yeah, it was basically based on that.
You call yourself an accidental filmmaker, and I imagine a lot of this film was discovered after on the editing table, because you kind of glean so many impressions with filmmakers, interviews, and this film is also full of happy accidents. With Sherwani, there is this like the drilling happening, right? So I wanted to know how you kind of, because this is such a free form documentary, how did you kind of, I imagine there'll be moments that were more personal to you but couldn't make it into the sequencing of the film, and probably the other way around as well. So yeah, how did you kind of arrive at what should go in the film in which sequence?
Documentaries, I think editing is a very important part of documentaries, but of course, we struggled a lot with editing, but also I would say I clearly knew I shot quite a bit, but I clearly knew what was going into the film. And actually, when the personal moments began entering into my film, I for sure knew that is coming into the film, because like I said, the world already knows how tortured, how people are suffering, how much they are suffering. I wanted to give a inner perspective, inner lens. I wanted to show this intimate side of this country, the people, how they live, how they talk, how they express themselves, when they are not allowed to. One of my characters expresses through poetry, and there's a scene in which she reads Furug's verses, and intuition is such an important part of docs. So I had moved in really close into her face, and that's the only close-up in my film of this lady who reads poetry. And within a few seconds, she tears up. She starts crying while reading the poetry. And then after the take, I asked her, what were you feeling? And she's like, as a woman, when I'm reading her verses that talks about desire, I feel that I don't have a space in this society to talk about this, So reading her poetry makes me believe that I can speak about this thing. I just did it with you. This space of expression just, formed right now. It was created right now before the camera, which didn't exist before. And that's what music also brings to the film, because I went motivated by cinema and poetry. But because I come from a background of singing, and I learned Farsi a lot through songs. You asked about Farsi, and we've grown up listening to Hindi cinema and the songs, And when I went there, I discovered how close the songs are to our songs, from the 60s and 70s. And I just picked it up very naturally. And that's how I also learned Farsi. And everyone would ask me to sing, and I would sing, and I wouldn't understand why is everyone asking me to sing in public spaces. Later, I discovered that since the formation of the Islamic Republic in 1979, for 45 years, women haven't been allowed to sing publicly. And that is the joy people found including filmmakers, artists, regular people, found in me singing. And every time I sang, the space opened up. So these personal moments became the heart of the story, you know, that I was telling, and I didn't know it would become like this. But like you said, the film is full of happy accidents, like Iranian cinema is. And I just thank myself sometimes for believing in my intuition and keeping my camera on and allowing these accidents to enter into my frame. And so by the time I sat on my edit table, I knew yahi sab chahiye mujhe. And I had some other footage and I was like, I don't even want to look at that because that's the side of this country people know already. But this is my journey. And no matter, like, if even if 50 filmmakers make a film on Iran, my journey would always remain different. And that personal aspect is what sets the film apart. And that's what I stuck to. So, of course, we did a lot of experimentation in editing, but it's also very simply edited. It's there's a rawness that's there in the film, and that's I told my editors that I want to stick to this rawness. I don't want to make something big, too intellectual, you know, something so layered. It has to be a simply told film because anyway it has many layers. The sound, the brief I gave to my sound designers and mixers was retain the rawness. It's a out in the street film. It shouldn't look like seasoned filmmaking. I am not a seasoned filmmaker. I have made this film telling my story honestly, and that is the language that I want to retain in my film. I even told my colorist that. So in the end, this was the outcome of it.
Do we have questions? I want to focus on the exhibition part of your films because all the three films here have premiered in Europe. Your film and your film in Berlin and your film in Venice. So wanted to understand what these big film festival exposures bring to your film specifically and like to filmmakers in particular, I mean in general. And also whether showing it in a place like Mami, which is in some ways it's a homecoming, right? So is there something that is lost when you're showing abroad in terms of context? Is there something gained from there when you're showing in a festival that is not your home place? And vice versa, when you're showing here, is there something that is lost and that is gained?
So I will briefly answer this. While showing in the Berlin, what I felt is, in India, Maoist, Naxalite backdrop films, there are so many films over the years. So I don't have to tell same thing again and again. So I didn't spoon feed a single thing. So I directly went to the characters and told their story. I am not interested in the politics. I am interested because anti-ideology film anyways. So I am interested in the person. So that was my focus. In Berlin, what happened? The audience was like, "What is Maoist? What is Naxalite?" So they're more interested in the backdrop. So I felt, yeah, it's more. I did not make film for the Naxalite or the ideology. I make the film for the tribals or the characters. So that is, yesterday I had a premiere here in Mami. So that portion is not, I mean, people did not discuss that. They discussed character. So that was the great thing at Mami. I was very looking forward to it. In Berlin, what happened, the person who connected, like a lot of people connected otherwise also. One person who was German person, he did PhD in India in 90s. He went to tribal areas. He actually, we had a beer session after my screening and we talked a lot because he didn't have that barrier. Because in a way, I felt that barrier do not exist for me in Mami or Indian audiences because I don't have to, I mean, I did not have to explain that thing. So that is the one thing I felt. Yeah.
I think obviously it goes without saying that is an incredible platform. I mean, especially for a film like Stolen, which first time director, I mean, it's an incredible platform. It has and probably in the future will give me a very unique calling card. It will help me open doors that I had probably no chance of even getting there before this. So I think being part of a really prestigious festival like a Venice, Berlin, a Cannes, I mean Toronto, Sundance, whatever, the top 5 we can say, it is a huge incredible opportunity. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think it was very exciting. Also, I mean, it's like way beyond my imagination. I mean, I never imagined I would be there. I mean, it was great. As far as the film goes, I think I there is that difference of that's the cultural nuance, but with Stolen, it was not so stark. The film drives on very straightforward, simple ideas, and everyone kind of gets it. Sure, I mean, I think that maybe the only small missing link is the cultural nuances, which can be. I mean, the slight there's a certain there's parts of the film that are a little are intended to be a little funny, which maybe did not fall as well on the European audiences. I mean, the film played in Venice, Zurich, London. So I thought that but they did. I mean, the major parts that were like some of the crucial ones that are a little funny, they got it, but maybe not every little nuance. That's really the only difference I personally felt. I mean, the audience was totally engaged. They empathized with the characters. There was slightly different interest levels. I mean, in Italy, it was more about the realism, the sort of very stark raw nature of the film. In Zurich, they were very curious about what's going on. In UK, they were more connected to the characters. So it was kind of a little bit different, I think. And I don't know those countries and the people well enough to understand why they picked one or the other. But there was a certain difference in that. But overall, I think everybody sort of really empathized and really connected with the film as as a whole. And in India also similarly, with that little added caveat of getting those slight more cultural nuances that are there, and the little a few of those funny elements, I think, that kind of got missed maybe.
I would quickly add, I mean, what happened after the screening, one person, very interesting experience, one a 65, 55 old, I don't know the age, but he was old enough. He came and he told me that he was gorilla with, when in the Berlin part, in the East Germany part, and he could empathize with the character, and the film should release in Berlin. So that was like where it come from. I mean, it was suddenly, something which, and the houseful show was the East Berlin part of the Berlin. So the National Theatre of East Germany, where I had a houseful show and standing ovation. So which was I could make out, my film is touching those chords. So, and her film got an amazing response, she will tell.
Yeah. So this film is about an Indian's journey into Iran. So we'd imagine that Iran and India are the two biggest audiences, but also we have Indians and Iranians are scattered around the world in such large numbers. So fortunately, Berlin, after 7 years, when I was losing hope and getting frustrated and thinking, oh my God, what else can I do with this film and finish it, I got a confirmation from Berlinale. And it was actually a dream come true, because I knew that Berlin has one of the largest diaspora of Iranian audiences, and also so many Asian audiences there. And we had 5 screenings. Every screening went house full, and the word of mouth keeps spreading in, when you have back-to-back screenings. And by the time the 5th and the last screening took place, which was the biggest hall with, I think, 1,000 plus, it had 2 stories, it was very big. And I could feel that at least 80% people were Iranians over there. And but a lot of people, came about, Japanese people, Chinese people, Indians, Asians, Iranians, everyone came and they just hugged me. And also when we showed it in CPH docs later, like general Europeans came up to me and said, I did not know this is the struggle you guys go through. And she just, this lady at CPH Doc, she just held me for 5 minutes and she just howled. And I didn't expect that, And there were of course, Iranians were howling. I expected that. But a person from Denmark, just holding me and crying and saying that I realize how privileged we are and it breaks my heart. And that's something I didn't expect. So it's a mix. Then we showed at Asia. I showed at DMZ Docs in South Korea and then Taiwan. And of course, the perception is different. The way people engage is different. But at the end of the day, I think we're one people. We feel love similarly. We feel sadness. When there is war, we get affected. We cry. When people are dying, we don't ask whose people are dying. We just cry. It breaks our heart. And cinema just connects audiences, because these are universal feelings. Yesterday we had our premiere here, and it was, of course, I knew that Indians love Iranian cinema, and I knew that fan factor, the cinephiles will all come and watch the film, and I got really beautiful questions about my journey, and it was never ending. I think it continued outside. I knew that this is going to come from Bombay, Mumbai, and then hopefully we'll show at Calcutta. So even people are crazy in Calcutta. That's my home. So I'm hoping that it's the same. But I just realized that it's not, if you say that it's a film on Iran, some people feel that it's not about us. But it is about us, because we are one people, and cinema is all about empathy, like we spoke about. Unless we feel empathy for others who are not our own, like we are not connected to them, then how do we feel in the first place? And why do we make films? So that's what I've learned in this process. It's my first film, and it was a huge learning experience, and it's been very fulfilling.
On that beautiful note, I would like to thank the filmmakers on this panel for their wonderful films, presenting them at MAMI, and we are so proud to have South Asia premiere. And I wish them the very best for the film's subsequent commercial and festival journey. Thank you so much.
Please come watch the films. I think this is off. If you're interested, come watch our films and spread the word, maybe, because I think films like ours, we need y'all to tell your friends about our films. Yeah.
So it's actually related to what you were talking about, but like in a sort of a diametrically opposite manner. Firstly, congratulations to all of you. It's incredible, your achievement.
Thank you.
Did you, because I can tell from the films you made, this is your vision and this is what you wanted to make. And sometimes when you're making indie films, it can be so sort of hard, and it can be a struggle, especially convincing people in Mumbai, in India. So the question is, what you guys were talking about, your experience on how the audiences in Zurich and London and Berlin resonated with it. Actually, did you feel, or sometimes they didn't catch the nuances, did you actually feel that maybe they were viewing I understand the in your specific case of the Naxalite, they might not have that particular context, but did you somewhere feel that they didn't have any baggage, which sometimes Indian audiences have, of whatever 200 other films which have come and the kind of taste they have here, and when they were watching your film, they were just watching it for the narrative itself. So did you feel that in some way, the question is a little opposite. Did you somewhere feel there were things they got which people here didn't get? Or maybe connected with it maybe on just a genre sense of a film only in a car. They didn't care about like some of the other trappings which came with it, or, they're just watching a film about, Iran, and they're just watching it for the universal emotions and not thinking, why doesn't it have this element or that element which is present in Indian films?
So basically, in my film, it is a universal film because I am focusing on trust rather than politics of it. So that, if you replace Naxalite and put Colombian drug lords, my film can be made in Colombia also. So that is there. But the curiosity was there. People from east side of Berlin who were in the East Germany, they could relate. they could draw parallels. But apart from that, even in the Western side, the new age or a young public, they can relate. But there was a lot of curiosity because I did not explain or spoon feed because you are not supposed to. But there was a lot of curiosity. The feeling got across. But apart from that, the curiosity was there, and I agree. I could feel even theater-wise, like on the letterbox after each and every show, there was a ratings. So I could feel कि यार East Berlin में जो national Kino National है, that rating was higher. So I could feel Berlin का particular suburb was reacting differently to the film. So
So
that is there.
if you're talking about Letterboxd, have you guys noticed, like in terms of whatever Letterboxd or all the other reviews, that like some people are like getting my film, some people, it's like maybe
So
they are
as
not.
a filmmaker, it will always happen. In a screening in Berlin, a German lady came and told me that it is her best film of the festival, which was a huge compliment. I was like flying for a moment, and another person came and he just told me Germans are very frank. So he told me I didn't like your film. So for the filmmakers, we get all perspective after a festival journey. So, but what Letterboxd was doing is after each show, it was showing the ratings.
Correct.
So I could see the Berlin ka this portion is loving me, this portion is probably not. So I could find out this is a east part of Berlin which was under the Russian occupation. So that was reacting favorably. थोड़ा सा जो modern young affluent section है was kind of this. Yeah.
I mean, I want to add one small thing to, I guess this is absolutely true, and curiosity, new exotic world, etc. But I think when there are some films, that are told in an honest way, or I mean, my own personal experience, when I watch some films, I forget everything. My baggage is all gone. You're so transfixed by the material. That's the kind of stuff that I really love to watch, where you forget everything. You forget your problems. You forget your, bills to pay. You forget everything about, and you just transfixed by the material. You're transfixed by the characters, by the stories, and then you later intellectualize it, but in that moment you're just with that flow. And I think that really, those films are the ones that really like are global in that sense. When you talk about global filmmaking, and nobody can say, we all want to make great films, we all want our audiences transfixed, but nobody knows what is going on. I don't know actually. I just go out there and make it honestly, but I think then it doesn't matter cultural nuance, I mean, I think maybe some of you saw Monster. I have not seen it. I'm a big fan of Corrida. But it is a film I believe that everybody connects with. And all of his films, I mean, I don't know shit about Japanese. I've never been there. But when I watch a Corrida film, I mean, as an example, I never think what I know about those people or not. Those characters deeply, you get really invested in them. They're like they could be your family. I mean, if you've experienced that with him particularly, since, I mean, Monster's been doing the rounds, everyone's been talking about it, and I'm sure it's a cracker of a film.
So basically, festival's idea is to break that baggage also. All the programming also done in such a way to, let audience go their baggage. That is also a festival tries to do.
Audiences in Europe and different parts of the world are isolated within their own circles. So this lady who hugged me and said that I didn't know this happens in a place like Iran or in a place like India, and she just held me and cried. She told me that I'm so isolated in my world that I didn't know this. I heard about it, but your films have made me feel that this happens, and that was the moment of breakdown for her. So I think boundaries and borders are man-made. It's created by us, and when fortunately we've been able to show our films in different parts of the world, and we realize that how we are connected as human beings. And cinema has that potential, to make us remember our characters, these people, and also makes us feel that, feel what they feel. And forget the baggage for a bit. And then if you don't know something, you read it up. But the feeling to tab hai na, we feel, we cry, we laugh. In London, I had this very intimate screening, and I always thought in English audiences are very uptight. They don't really express like us. But the whole house was like roaring with laughter, and I was like, "What is happening?" And the idea that we also have of the West, Europe, breaks suddenly for us as filmmakers, and I think it's just a great experience to have, and very, very fortunate that I could have it, and yeah.
The same way?
The connection is different. Like for example, for someone who is living this reality every day in Iran, they might just don't not want to see a documentary like
Exactly.
this. So it is different. For example, people in Iran don't really want to watch docs or films which are hard hitting and political all the time, because they are witnessing their parents being killed, people being executed every day. So it's different. Yeah. Iranians in Iran react to the film a little differently, but actually the film is very poetic. It's not hard hitting in a very political manner, but it is political. So people have connected in so many different ways, but the connection is there. Even if you don't want to watch it, it's important, and it's happening around us.
See, I personally think for the local issues or political issues, the connection could be different, but human emotions ultimately are the same. So that's where the convergence happens. So
You have one last question at the back.
Hi, my name is Russell De Silva. My question is to all three of you all. I would particularly like to focus on the courage you all displayed, not to touch upon these subjects, but to go with your vision, especially in a scenario as I personally, if I could give a little background about myself, I work in the entertainment media. I'm a film critic and a journalist over there, and so I have been. I'm usually centered around a lot of commercial cinema. Now, the courage it takes to make these films, especially how y'all want to make it, uncompromisingly, without any commercial trappings. That's what I want to focus on, because like y'all were talking about how it resonates with people in Europe, how it resonates elsewhere, and probably the Indian audience, like the gentleman made a very pertinent statement, like about probably the least resonance y'all may get from the Indian audience because of the kind of palette of cinema that we have been brought up on. I am probably one of those rare people who will watch a Pathan and a Jawan and the next moment come and watch our films and enjoy both. But everybody doesn't have that. So that courage, how does that courage and that conviction, how do you all hold on to that as filmmakers? That you all could talk about this for other aspiring filmmakers out there. And B, would this have been possible, say, 10 years ago in the Indian scenario of filmmaking without a platform like MAMI existing, without the exposure it gives you all?
ignorance is a blessing. So first time filmmakers, ignorance is a good thing. So when I started, I wasn't aware what journey I will go into. So it was just make a film kind of thing. And one thing is very sure, both of my producers at that point of time, very clear, they wanted to do an experimental film. So brief was very clear. And there was no such thing to prove a commercially success, and we'll still open. My producers still think, it might work commercially. So we haven't rejected. We are going without a baggage as far as commercial goes. And I personally believe in diversity of cinema. Commercial industry exists and it makes money. That's why experimental films like ours get funded to start with. And not only in India, I found it everywhere in the world. So it's like it's a part of it, kind of. So I think 10 years ago, it's very difficult to say 10 years ago, situation might not be conducive for independent films, but they're probably, I don't know, I'm just assuming, they're more liberal. ran to today. So it's perspective.
But also about the audience, I mean, yeah, there's a more niche audience, but there is an audience, you know. That's why festivals have been happening for so many years. The IFFI has been happening for 57th year, maybe this year. 56th year. Mami has been happening for 25 years. I come from Calcutta. You won't believe, like, I mean, how big the lines go, you know, like, cinephiles are crazy people, you know. Like when we were in college, we used to wait to watch a film in a queue for 3 hours. So who are these people? It's us only. And people have work, you know. We were students, but then people with day jobs would, you know, find bahanas and come and watch films for 7 days. So this other audience also exists, and till the time they exist, hopefully our films will exist, you know.
Film festival platform is very important for that.
Of course, and it's been there. It's not just 20 before. Mami is very important, of course, and it's a global platform, I believe. You know, for people, Mami gets a lot of delegates internationally, but other festivals have also been doing it for many years, and Mami is continuing the tradition and, you know, adding its own lot of values to it. You know, bringing people together, but these platforms have existed. People like us exist, and because of this audience, we also maybe get the courage to, you know, make these films. But for first-time filmmakers, like we spoke, that we have this courage, you know, film to khatam karna hai, matlab banana hai, chalo banate hai. But hopefully we can retain it for our next films. But I would say for myself, and maybe a little bit for them, we all feel exhausted after making these films and having these long journeys, you know. Some of us don't have producers in our first film. I produced it myself. So it's a happy time to celebrate and our completion, celebrate completing something we've been making for so many years, but sometimes we just feel exhausted. So hopefully platforms like this will help, you know, find us producers, find us distributors in the next films. And I hope you all, being a part of the press, would also spread the word and help a little bit, contribute in our journeys, and hopefully it'll be easier. Hopefully.
And I would also like you, when now that you're answering, a little bit to add, because I'm sure Stolen is going to do the rounds of, since Abhishek and all is there, do the rounds of coming to theaters, having interviews, you know the works. So a little bit highlight on that also.
I was just about to say that Srikanth has programmed the film. Stolen is certainly not an art house film. I mean, far from it. It's a genre film. I want my films to be widely watched. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know commercial. I don't know art house. I mean, I know art house, but I don't know. I don't understand really what is commercial, what is not. I tell these stories in this way, or I'm attracted to stories of a certain kind because of who I am. I can only probably do it in that way because of who I am, how I look at the world, what I see around me. Is only that drives my art. I mean, there is no other way for me to do it. Even if I had to do something which was, you know, maybe I would not be able to do it. I think that's the reality of it. I mean, it only drives it through a process of who I am, how I think, and what I look at the world as. Really, that's the thing about it. Stolen is probably not going to make it in theaters in India. I don't know. Very unlikely. Stolen is not getting the kind of, there's not people coming chasing after us to buy our film.
Abhishek Banerjee is a pretty popular name now.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. I think, yes, he is popular and sure, I mean, but he's no Shah Rukh Khan, and, you know, that's the kind of films that make it that. So I don't know, actually. I mean, the journey is kind of odd. I didn't expect it was going to go to Venice. I didn't expect it was going to play in a theater in India. And all of these things are currently happening. So I don't know, I mean, what to make of it. But I didn't think of a result, honestly. I didn't know about where it's going to go, what's going to happen to it. I just made the film that I wanted to make. I wanted to tell this story. There was a certain catharsis for me to tell this story. And for me personally, I feel like personally for me, like really deeply, the thing that I am most happy about, and I think that it's something that I can, you know, hold on to, is that even 30 years later, Stolen is going to be a document of India and that's not going to change because it's there, it's been made, it tells the story of the times today, and I think that's what I was setting out to do, you know, in a way, and I'm happy with that at this point, at least. Yeah, I wanted to get sold to someone, and I wanted to, you know, go into a theater. I want my film to be widely watched. That's, I think, every filmmaker's dream, I think, and that's that holds true for all of us.
So I will quickly add few. So like Sreemoyee said, you know, the festival audience, it's all over, you know, India. But question is, I'm thinking not as a filmmaker, but as an audience, will they pay money to watch our films? That's a big question. Now we definitely have a loyal Bollywood audience. The only thing, new audience has to come. Because this Bollywood audience do not accept our kind of cinema. It's very obvious. Data is there. So new audience, Mami is that platform where the new audience is created. Or the festival, they might not be paying, or they may be paying indirectly through sponsorship, or because of the crowd, because of the event, indirectly, you know, praying for this such promotional kind of event. You can see as a Mami as a promotional event of Stolen or Ghaath or, you know, her film. You know, so the point is, we need new audiences. Instead of, you know, वो एक छोटा सा indie cinema का एक केक करने से अच्छा उसको बढ़ाना है, it will help Bollywood also. When Bollywood is in crisis, because there was no new fresh ideas जो यहीं space से आने वाली है, ऐसा मुझे लगता है.
Yeah, and also we need younger audience, you know, audiences coming and, you know, bringing their films, bringing the market, and we need platforms like this which brings in the press and make the press interested in films like ours, you know. There needs to be a shift that happens because this is our reality, and why would people not be interested? So, yeah.
Regarding Ghaath, has you spoken about Stolen? So luckily, my producer Shiladitya is working in the indie space for a long time. So we are going to have a theatrical release. I don't know how big. We don't know what will be the strategy, but the idea is to experiment and to find that new audience. Being a Marathi film, it's a bit easier than a Hindi film because Hindi film ka economics is totally different, and Marathi film ka risk factor is less compared to a big release film. So, but it's a kind of experiment. So we don't know. He's very hopeful that film will make money. My film, German people think it's a genre film. Indian commercial people think it's a art house film. So I am in between kind of.
If I may say so, Marathi cinema is actually, in general, far more courageous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the money, risk, and distribution costs are less. So that is.
Audiences have gotten, like, you know, sort of they've raised the bar themselves. It's like it's a system that everybody has to kind of get into. Like she's saying, we need new audiences. We need more people to want to watch those films. I think in the Marathi cinema that's happened, and it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
It can't happen in like 1 or 2 years. You know,
And regional film industry always been a lab for the Bollywood.
Yeah.
You know, यहाँ से वो idea उठा के उधर ले रहा है. So I think Bollywood should also release our films as a lab. ठीक है, you know, experiment. Because then they will have an idea जहाँ पे idea stuck हो जाएगा, growth नहीं हो रही है, fail हो रहा है market बार-बार, तब वो lab से idea उठा सकते हो. तो हमारे ऊपर पैसा खर्च करो. That is the message to the Bollywood.
Please hold on to the courage and conviction.
Yeah, I wish all your films will find its a home audience. And thank you so much for the conference. We can have a chat informally outside, but now we have to wrap it up. Thank you so much.